Hello, everyone. It's our live, and I'm joined by a surprise guest, Daniel, which is going to join us today and share his thoughts and throw us with questions. Daniel, do you want to say a few words?
Just to say hello to everybody. It's nice to be here. Looking forward to hearing all your perspectives and getting your questions.
Yeah, I think this is quite an interesting topic, and we can dive deep into it. And definitely, if Shannon, Priya, I see you guys are here, please join us and give us your viewpoints and be interactive with us, and so we can all learn together from each other. I would like to open with a quote from Maya Angelou, which says, if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. Now, I don't like the word attitude, so for me, I will change it to perspective. And I want to get your thoughts on that. How have you how have you changed your perspective on past situations? So for those that have joined us, please share if there's any situation where you had to go back and change your perspective. This live is going to be very personal because I'm going to share a lot of my personal experiences. So while you answering, we're waiting for your answers. I'm going to share one of my points where I had to go back into my past and change perspective on a certain situation. Well, there was lots of them. So I'm going to start with where I've lost my employment and how important it is not to go into a negative mindset and to go back and change your viewpoint on why it has happened and to find the positive on that. What I've done is I went and I reflected and I said, I need to find the silver lining. Why did this happen? I'm talking about the first time. Being a single parent and losing that income that you desperately need. So what I've done is I went and I sat and I said, okay, I can't change the situation. That's the first thing is, can you change it? No, it's happened. Then I went and I asked myself the question, was it your fault? No, it wasn't my fault. It was basically a retrenchment that came in. So it was the company's fault. They failed. So they failed more than one employee. So that's not a negative on myself. So get back up, send your CV out, and go and look for different job employment, and take the lesson from that, what you can learn from that. Daniel, I don't know if you have a viewpoint on something where you went back and you had to change the perspective on the situation.
So for me, it was when I was, again, similar to you, but I was out of work. Hello, Andini. It's nice to see you joining us. No, I was out of work and just kept getting knockbacks. Everywhere I applied for, every job I applied for, just wasn't giving us a chance. And I remember going to some interviews where I thought I'd done like really, really well. Everything that was expected, but again, I just wasn't getting the job for some reason. So I just had to take time, reflect on what was it that was missing, what wasn't I doing, but having reflected, I was doing everything, and I said, if I could do this my way to get me a job, how would I do it? And I came up with the conclusion that if I was to do work experience and show them what I can do because I'm better at showing people what I can do rather than talking about it or writing about it. So I said that's going to really help me. So I went to the job centre and I told them, I want to do some work experience that has the opportunity to lead to a job. And that's how I got the job where I was working at now. Because I was just about ready just to give up. But that reflection and taking a step back helped me see the situation from a different perspective.
Yeah. For those who've joined us, I've maybe a bit late. I've asked the question: is share a situation where you had to change your perspective on a past event. While we're waiting for those answers, something that I want to mention is the importance of changing your perspective. If I look at a personal thing that happened with me was with my divorce. At the end of the day, I started blaming myself. And if I didn't go back to do that deep inner work and really delve deep into every single situation over the years that we went through, where I felt, okay, I was guilty, it's my fault, where I actually went and I analyzed that situation and I've asked so many questions. And really, it's an emotional journey that you go on. But afterwards, once I've analyzed it, I realized that it wasn't me. The problem wasn't with me. And how I changed my perspective, for instance, is the person would say, you can't make nice coffee. Was that true? Was that his viewpoint? Was that his perspective? Was it my perspective? Was it other people's, families, friends, children? Did they also think that that I couldn't make nice coffee? And it's a easy thing to mention that it's a simple task making coffee, but it can break a person down, and you need to change your perspective on that. I went and I said, you know what? That was his viewpoint. That was his perspective. Why am I taking the negative? The positive was there people came to visit. I made coffee. No one ever complained. And if they returned, they did drink my coffee again. So if it was really so bad, people would say to you, no, you know what, rather I'm not thirsty. Let's skip it. But it took years. It took a lot of introspection to go and understand that it wasn't you, and to take that positive point out of that and say, you know what? It happened. It's not true. It's one person's perspective. So the importance is to go back into your past and really analyze situation where you felt that negativity, that you were at fault. And to fix that and to put that positive out there. Take the lesson from that. So in future, if something like that comes up, that you don't do it again, that you don't misjudge yourself again and put yourself down and use that negative talk on yourself. Daniel, I don't know if you've got something from your side that you want to add.
I'm just loving everything you're saying about really reflecting on things. I think that's my biggest thing that I've taken away is reflection is a time to retrain, as I would put it, retrain the brain and the thought processes. Because if you just let them carry on, they just talk over one another and you get no sense in your own mind. So I'm just looking at some of the comments coming through. They're really good.
I'm going to start putting them up now. I've also looked at them. This is Shannon. Shannon is saying the same situation knocked my self-confidence down for a while. So once again, it is just to go back to those situations. If you still feel negative, if you still feel you haven't dealt with it, or you still feel I was a failure, or it didn't work for me, or it's my fault, go back, do that inner work. As I said, it's an emotional journey. You have to go deep, and you have to really dig in deep and go and see the positive and find the happiness and what's happened in there. Priya shared a big one for me was when I was told that I'm incapable and worthless in the past. Over the past 2 years, I've rephrased and completely changed my train of thoughts towards myself after meeting you guys. It's a beautiful comment, Priya. Thank you for sharing that with us. Shannon is also sharing, I thought of myself as a victim for far too long and thankfully learned new tools. Shannon, if you can share with us what tools you've used and what you've learned to overcome that feeling the victim. Personally, I was there as well. After the whole divorce thing stepped in, I saw myself as the victim. But to get out of that victim mode, you need to change your perspective. You need to go see what is the positive. I mean, I lost my employment. I had to move 3 times. Sure, so many. But what I did is I said I'm not the victim, and I got my own power back. And during that whole thing is those questions you ask yourself. What can I learn from this? What positive is coming from that? I walked out. I realized afterwards it was a narcissistic marriage. I was broken down, and the positive was that I was free. I found myself. It was hard, but I got that freedom. I got my confidence back, and I can be vulnerable. Daniel, do you have something that you can
add? Yeah, so for me, it's taken a lot of years to do, but I've retrained my mind to always instantly look for a positive rather than a negative. Taken lots of years to keep doing that, but that's only been possible because I've been able to go back and have a look and see the positives that from past situations, and then to learn to apply that in future situations. So I'm going to use the pandemic again, but when the pandemic come, what can I do now was my question. Like, what can I do? There's so much I can do, but what can I do? There's certain things I can't do. They're out of my control, but I can make something good of this. So with every situation, you can always change that perspective, that look on it. Instead of looking at what I now can't do, look at actually what you can do.
That's beautiful said. Definitely what you can do, if I can relate that to my health issues, I can still use my voice. I'm not the most active person. Walking, I can't run. Walking is difficulty, but I can use my voice. I can still help people. I can still be there for people and support people, which is more important than being able to walk. I just want to go back to the comments. Yeah, they're flying past. Priya is saying those people will always put their Priya, you make me laugh every time I read you and see you swear. So those people will always put their shit on others. Absolutely true. Been there, experienced it. Then she said that reprogramming is important for us to move forward. Vijaya saying the emotional work takes time. Absolutely. Reading, writing, withdrawing into myself is a big part of the journey. You know what? I can share that. I've done that. I spent 2 years on developing myself in self-development, and it took a lot of work. There was 4 months, I think it was 4, that I went and I lived on myself, by myself, not on myself, by myself, and found myself, and really just did that inner work, going deep, changing that perspective on the past. While we're on the topic, the question that I want to ask you guys: what do you view as the past? Do you view that as childhood? Do you view it as teenage years? Do you view it as adulthood? I would like to get your points on that before I share how I feel on that. Just going back to some comments again, is Shannon, my son used to love my son used tough love with me, so I got back to journaling and getting out in nature more than I realized my blessings, rather than my perspective being focused on what was lacking. That is another important point, is to have that support. Tough love can be either negative or positive. It depends on your state of mind and how you can implement it. That's just my perspective on it. The person must be ready to receive that message of a bit of tough love. I used it on my mom the other day, because there was no other alternative, and it changed the perspective and it brought her out of that negative mindset. So yeah, and for me, it's very important to have support and someone that you can trust, that you can share things with, that when you get that negative thought pattern, that can say to you, but you're doing something that's breaking you down and giving you the opposite to build you back up. So support for me is important. Daniel, your thoughts on that?
It just ties nicely into, I think, why I'm training to be a coach, because there's people that are struggling, and I can really help change their perspective through effective questioning, so that they obviously will come up with their own answers. But I think a lot of times I see people stuck with a certain perspective, a certain negative perspective, and I think for an outsider, it's easier to change that perspective. And I know we have tools in our coaching that we can use to help people look from a different perspective. And I really like that sort of area.
Daniel, that plays nicely onto what what the comment that I'll show next is. It's if my son hadn't pointed out to me that I was playing the victim, as I really didn't see it. It's sometimes when you are visually blocked and you don't see that you're heading nowhere, you're not growing, you're stagnating, and you need that one person or two people just to give you the reality. I think that's the right word, and open your mind and open your eyes for you to move forward. Priya is saying, I lost myself in inflicting pain on myself, eating junk food, avoiding reality, harboring anger. It has taken years of self-awareness and to do the inner work. The journey continues. I agree with Vijaya. The journey continues. It's going to latch onto the question I've asked about how do you view the past. So we're going to expand on that as soon as people are starting to answer the question about the past. Okay, Vijaya is saying, past is everything as latest as yesterday. And Dini, absolutely, Adele, having a good support system around us during difficult times helps tremendously. Absolutely agree with that. I love the saying of when you lost something, find yourself. Okay, so anyone else sharing what they view as the past? Because I agree with Vijaya. It can be yesterday. It can be like 10 minutes ago. It can be 5 minutes ago. For me, it's a continuous journey to go into reflection and that work. You continue to work on that positive mindset, looking for the positive, sharing that positive thoughts, and changing it. As I said, go look for that silver lining. If you had, what's the word I'm looking for? If you had a misunderstanding with someone and you're feeling negative about it, take that step back, go reflect, and go change it to a positive. What is the good that came out of it? You might have reached some point of agreement after the whole altercation. You might have solved a problem that you were unaware of. And if you didn't go back and reflect, you wouldn't be able to change it. Going back to situations with myself, once I found employment again, it was I moved across the country, to a total new province, drove there totally unprepared. I had a week's notice to find accommodation, to find places for my kids to stay because I couldn't move there. When I got there, it's a whole new culture. It's learning to understand people, and a whole different company from where I used to be, different management styles, different people to understand. So you're basically learning from scratch. And I had to go and constantly every day go and reflect and change my perspective. If something negative happened in the workplace, is what can I learn from here? How can I improve it? It's constantly having to adjust and find that positive perspective. I've had so many negative situations. If I didn't go back and do that inner work and that emotional thing, emotional journey, I don't think I would have been here today. I lost that employment after moving across the country again, due to different situations, but mostly my health was a big issue for them. And if I didn't go and sit and say, what's going to happen now? How can I change the situation? How can I, what's the word I want to use? How can I see the positive in this? Is now the second time that I don't know what I'm going to do. And I went and I analyzed, and I said, okay, I've got enough savings for 4 months, because they had to give me 4 months salary in advance. So if I can't find employment in 4 months, what am I going to do? And then the lockdown happened. during that. And what I did is I went and I said, okay, my health wasn't good. I was struggling. So this is the best outcome for me, is lose the employment, lose your income, but the positive is you're not going to battle every day anymore. You're not having to put up with that fight. You're not having to go through those struggles. Did they help you in the end of the day? They actually did me a favor. I should actually thank them, because with that, I got involved with Coaching Minds started. And so many opportunities are opening up for me at this point. So if that hadn't happened, I would still have been stuck in that job just to get an income. It wasn't my passion. It was just to take care of my kids. It was an income. It was accommodation. So the actual end of the day, I need to go and say, thank you. You did me a favor. Once again, I found myself, I found more passion, where I can go out and do more for people and have that extra time than working in retail, where you work 7 days a week. You get maybe 2 or 3 days off, and you work longer hours. You work from like 7:30 in the morning until 6, 7 at night. Then you have to get home. You have to take care of your kids. They were lonely. Now I'm there for them. So it's actually one massive positive what has happened for me. It came that I had to relocate during lockdown, with a lot of special permissions, because I had to cross provinces and we weren't allowed to cross provinces during the lockdown at that stage. I had to get permits to travel. I had to, because financially I couldn't stay down there anymore, and I moved back to my parents. Sharing my perspective on that past event was, why did it happen? My question was, why is this happening? Now I've got the answer. My dad is ill. My mom needs support. Didn't that all happen to get me to support them? So out of that one negative, how much positive have come from that? Daniel, do you want to share anything that you have gone through before we go back to the comments?
So there's one thing I want to share. It might sound a little bit cheesy, but it's just sort of been at the beach, and say being on the south side of the beach and really looking at the view. But then you walk around to the north side of the beach, you're still looking at the same thing, but you can see many different things. It's a different angle, it's a different perspective that you're looking from. And that always is a visual for me to shift my mindset, and that I've got to move in order to actually see things from that other perspective. And you know, although you're looking at the same stuff, it almost looks better from a different perspective.
Then you're making me think of there's two posts on Facebook that I've come across, and I've shared that in my circle. Well, the one I shared in my circle, the other one Paul was mentioning the other day, the 6, and you've got the one guy standing at the one side and the one guy standing at the other. The one says 6 and the one says 9. It's just that different perspective. The other one that I've shared in my circle was a guy standing on a balcony. I must now remember correctly. The one is driving a new car, and the guy on the bicycle that's on the bicycle thinks, wow, I wish I could have a new car. And then the guy on the balcony, I think, is in a wheelchair. I'm trying to go by memory here. And then he actually says, wow, that guy on the bicycle has got the freedom to go where he wants. So it's always, we always see a thing from our perspective. Why not use it and look from someone else's perspective? You might think you're very unlucky, but actually you are not. You're luckier than most of people around you. It's just to have that different perspective. Vijay's put a comment here that says, having support systems was turning out to be an addiction. I was relying heavily on them emotionally. I just had to cut away from everyone. The reality check was that I hated the person I had become. You know, that's also, it's true, it's good to have that support system, but like Vijaya says, relying too much on them to carry you through is also not helping you. Because you don't learn to stand on your own 2 feet. You always have that, I call it a crutch, where people can help you. So yeah, that for me is important. Is not to rely too heavily. And as I said, you have to go do that inner work yourself. Share it with people, have that support. But as I said, I did 4 months on my own. When I moved, I knew no one. I knew my cousins stayed there in the town where I moved to, but I never contacted them. It took my car to break down to contact them. I think that was after, the kids were there already. So that was after 4 or 5 months. I said, I'm going on my own. I'm going to just delve deep, and I'm going to find myself, and I'm going to find my courage. I'm going to find my confidence. And then that's what I did. And when my car broke down, I found that positive. I was like, what am I going to do? I'm alone here. And then my dad said, just contact your cousin. I'm like, I don't even have my cousin's number. And that created another support system for me that I previously said, okay, I'm not going to go into. I lost my cousin when I was like in primary school. And to contact him after all the time and say, I need your help, was also not who I was. It wasn't easy for me to ask for help. But I still see the positive there was my car had to break down for me to get out of where I pulled into myself too much. So the perspective on that was when I went back and I reflected, I said, okay, that's what happened. I needed to get out of my house. I needed to start mixing with people rather than going home and staying in my house and not going out. Priya is saying, I agree, Vijaya. For me, was upbringing leading up to the age of 27. And Dini is saying, having great support systems is like Shannon mentioned about her son, someone who take her out of a victim mindset. Exactly. It's support for me is there to just open your eyes and to pull you out from that negative. Like I just said, when my car broke down, it had to happen. It wasn't a negative, it was a positive. And that's where you need to have that strong mindset. And for me, it's the importance of going back and even back to your childhood. If there was a negative situation that you feel is holding you back, go and reflect on it. Go and see what positive came from that. Your teenage years, what positive came from that? But it's a lot of work. It's an emotional journey, but you have to do that in order to grow yourself. Daniel, do you have something to share on that?
So I just want to go back to Vijay's comment about the support systems. And while I really do agree that support systems really work, when we've got people who know how to give the support, but it's when you've got people who, for no fault of their own, they're not sure how to give that support, so they're just trying to give advice and tell you what the answer is, so you're not really thinking for yourself. And there's one thing that always sticks in my mind, that if you show somebody how to do something, if you give them the tools to do that, they can then go off and do it themselves. If you just keep saying, "Oh, I'll do it for you," or "This is the answer," they're going to keep coming back, and they're going to keep coming back because you are holding them back. Where I think giving them the tools and giving them the stuff that they need, that they realize that everything's within them, and they can, you know, come to their own a conclusion, their own perspective on it. That's when you see some really great results. I've actually done that. I'm sure Priya won't mind, but when we set up the wisdom webinars, she was coming to me, and I just thought it was just easier for me just to do it in that moment. So I would just set them up, but then Priya wasn't getting any benefit because she wasn't learning how to do it. But in that moment, it was, as we go back to, a quick win, a quick result. But once I took the time and shown Priya herself how to do that, she now doesn't need to rely on me, and she's a bit more freer to be able to do that whenever she needs to.
Daniel, I just want to say something that came to mind, is to thank everyone for opening up in the comments and sharing their thoughts and how they've overcome. And through all that, we can also learn new ways that we might not previously have thought of, and see new situations. So I really, really thank everyone for sharing. Vijaya is saying, even today, keeping myself busy throughout the day has helped me deal with things. Things take time. Just giving myself the permission to heal over time has helped. So just be busy. And Dini is saying, or great support systems, as in having someone or people who loves you unconditionally. And that kind of support system, in my opinion, gives you strength and security. Absolutely. And that's something I rejected. When my whole situation started, I said to myself, I'm going to do this on my own. And that to me was also wrong, because I pulled too much within myself. I remember my son's friend's mom one night came. I'm laughing, but she pulled me out the house. And she said to me, come. I didn't know her. She was my neighbor, but I never went out and I never got to know people. Tough love. She pulled me and she said, come, you're visiting. I tried to stay there for long. But eventually I said, you know what, I need to go. I needed my space. But it's people I didn't know that of support. And today I can say that's why she did it. Priya is saying, I think For me, my support system really helped me evolve. Absolutely, agree with that. While it's important to be not to be too dependent on that, we can slowly take those baby steps and learn to stand alone. It comes back to what I just shared. I wasn't willing to take baby steps. I was comfortable where I was in my house, not mixing with people, but I needed that wake up call. Is I'm pulling you literally by your hand to open your eyes to see you are going downhill. Um, while it's important, I'm just going back to Priya's comment, important to be too dependent on that. We can slowly take baby steps. That's when my baby steps started, is when she pulled me out my house. And she said, you all come and visit. And Shannon is saying, yes, Adele, getting out of my house is saving grace these days. Yeah, you can't be stuck in one place. It saved me when she pulled me out. I still don't go visit people often. I don't like going out, but I know the importance of that, and I know where that saving grace, like Shannon is saying, where that saving grace is lying. Shannon is also saying, once we realize that negativity leads to positive outcomes, it's well worth the work. Absolutely. Going back to change that perspective on past events, which is our topic, is how important it is for your growth, for just getting that positivity back in your life, for understanding things might not have been your fault. Again, the silver lining. What is positive? Stop that negative self-talk. You might have seen that situation as so negative. Meanwhile, the positives that came from that is far more than that one negative situation. And to me, that's key. And I'm going to end with a quote that I've put out myself quite several times already, but to me, it is very impactful. Priya is saying, thank you so much, Dan. Absolutely happy you took the time to show me to do it. It's a win-win. I'm glad, Priya, you're bringing up the book that we are doing, and you realize that you both actually won at the end of the day, and it was a win-win situation. Shannon is saying growth comes with time. Absolutely. I'm learning patience these days, and it helps me so much to be prepared when life doesn't go as planned. Absolutely. I mean, I can see in my situation even now, there's no routine. There is so many things happening, and nothing is going to plan. But I can see the positives because I reflect daily. At the end of the day, I can see what positive came out of it rather than a negative. Daniel, you've been quiet. Time to share something.
I'm always quiet. No,
Really?
I just love doing these lives, doing our webinars, and I love it when everybody joins and shares their perspective on things, because there's many a time when I've had a certain perspective on something, and somebody's comments come through, and it's really made me reflect and think about my whole perspective, my whole outlook on that situation. Many a times I've come off a live or a webinar, and I've actually just sat and reflected on what it is that they've said, and took the bits that I needed from their comment to help with my personal growth.
Daniel, I agree with you. For those that at the book club, I didn't read the chapters. And as they were talking yesterday, I sat and I reflected on a situation that I was dealing with. and what I can implement into that situation to not fix it, but to see the positive from that, and who's winning and who's losing. And I actually mentioned to them, I said, I'm sitting here reflecting. And then a discussion came out of that. So even with the lives, the comments, people sharing things, I go back to situations, not even yesterday, 5 years ago, to my childhood. If there's something that's still bothering me, I go and I use those things from the lives, the webinars, the book club, and I go back to that situation, that memory that's still there, but nothing's healed. And then I go back and I change my perspective and I see, but that's the positive. That is why it happened. That's the reason for it happening. I mean, I felt like within my situation, so many failures where I blamed myself. And the blame wasn't for me. If I didn't do that work and changed my perspective, I would still have been the victim. So it's so important to do that reflection, that inner work, go that emotional journey. It's not easy, and still be vulnerable. That vulnerability is also healing. And as I'm doing the live, I'm reflecting as we go along, and I'm healing, and I'm growing, and I'm seeing so many more positives than before. Sorry, I've had a comment here from Andini. The moment I accept that everything happens for me in life rather than to me, it is easier to see from the other perspective, although it's not always easy. Yes, it's hard, it's tough, but it's happening for you. Andini, I'm glad you shared that, because that is so important. It's something that I've not covered. It's not happening to you. It's happening for you. It's happening for your growth. It's happening for your happiness. It is putting you in a newer situation where you can say, I've overcome this, and this is why it's happened. And you're so much more positive once you understand why it's happened. And again, it's reflection. It is realizing that it didn't happen to you. Nothing happens to you. It happened for you. Very important point. Thanks for sharing that, Andini. Shannon is saying, while going through depression, I didn't want to go anywhere. I helped myself back from so many events that I would have had enjoyed. I'm so grateful I reached out and got help. That's important. If you're in that situation, I had someone pull me out of the house before I actually reached out for help. I was going down on a downward spiral, and it took so much to pull yourself out of there. Shannon, I'm glad that you could reach out for help, and you got the help that you needed. Andini is saying, yes, I love this too. I learned so much by attending live stream like this. Thank you guys for sharing. Andini, once again, thank you for sharing. You brought some very valid points as well. Shannon is saying things don't happen to us, they happen for us. It's similar to what Andini is saying. And it's so important, it's so valid. Vijaya is saying, we all need to figure out what works for us, finding the balance between healing through reflection, working on our present, and dreaming about a better future self. It is progress. Vijaya, that's beautifully stated. I just want to share a few points from what we've shared. It's about doing that inner work. Reflection. I'm taking main points that we've shared that you can use as tips to go and change your perspective on past events. is look for the silver lining. Importantly, once you go back, go ask yourself questions. If you think, okay, but that was so negative, ask yourself, why do I view it as negative? What can I do to change it to a positive? And importantly, what I've done is, that was the situation, what happened. I got divorced. But what came from it? Why did it happen? It happened to save me. It happened to save my children from a very toxic environment. And if it didn't happen, I would probably still be in that toxic relationship and probably been worse than off than depressed. So yes, it was a negative, but I'm free. I'm growing on myself. So much positives that came from that. It's just do that questioning. Look for the silver lining. Do the reflection. Don't be scared to be vulnerable. Don't be scared to go on that emotional journey. Go do it for yourself. Dan, have you got something to add to what I'm sharing?
I'm just loving all the comments and all the perspectives and all the tips. And I'll just do a little plug that next week I'm live doing 5 tips to change your perspective. So you can take from that what you need to take and what works for you, and we can have a nice, good discussion about it. So I also just want to thank people for joining us today.
Priya is saying thank you both for being open and sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you, Priya. I want to end with my quote to bring it a bit of a close. Is out of every negative, thousands of positives evolve. I would like you guys to just go ponder on that one and think about that one and use it in your reflections. And once again, I want to thank you all for joining us. Daniel, the surprise guest today. We kept that as a surprise. And thank you for joining us. And really, really thank you guys for being open, for sharing your experiences, sharing your thoughts, and just really grateful for all of you. And then it's just Jaya that's saying thank you all for sharing your experiences and your journey. Truly appreciate it. And Shannon, the answer lies within all of us, having a positive support system greatly. However, we must reflect within. That's key, is reflect within and do the inner work. It's key to get you to change your perspective. And then you're saying thank you so much. And guys, thank you so much for joining us. And Daniel, looking forward to your 5 tips next week and seeing you all there and interacting again. Thank you, guys. Goodbye.